The room went quiet before Rashida even finished reading the message. Her hands started shaking, not because she didn't understand the words, but because she did, every single one of them. The decision had already been made, and she was finding out the same way everyone else would, through whispers. According to insiders, Rashida was completely blindsided when Kirk Frost allegedly made a move that shook not just their marriage, but the entire love and hip-hop world. A move involving Jasmine Washington that no one saw coming. This wasn't another argument, this wasn't another rumor, this was final. Sources say Rashida didn't scream, she didn't throw anything. She just sat there in silence, staring at her phone, realizing that everything she fought to protect might be slipping away all over again. Fans thought they had seen the worst already. The cheating, the baby scandal, the public humiliation. But this hit different, because if the reports are true, this wasn't about a mistake anymore. It was about a choice. And the moment that choice was made, the damage couldn't be undone. Now everyone is asking the same question. How did it get this far, and what happens to Rashida now? For years, Rashida built her life on resilience. Publicly, she smiled through criticism. Privately, she carried wounds most people would have walked away from. Her marriage to Kirk Frost had already been tested in ways few relationships survive. And yet she stayed, not because she was weak, because she believed in repair. When the cheating scandal first surfaced years ago, Rashida didn't rush to cameras to cry. She handled it quietly, choosing counseling, boundaries, and accountability over chaos. Fans didn't always understand her choice, but Rashida did. She wanted stability for herself, for her family, and for the life she had worked hard to build. Then came Jasmine Washington. At first, Jasmine's presence felt like another storm Rashida would weather. Rumors, accusations, a child that brought permanent consequences. Rashida endured public humiliation that never fully faded. Every time she walked into a room, people whispered her pain back to her, but she stayed. That decision cost her emotionally, but it also hardened her. She learned to compartmentalize, to focus on business, motherhood, and survival. Love became something she managed, not something she trusted blindly. Behind closed doors, things were never as calm as they appeared on camera. Friends say Rashida struggled with resentment she didn't know how to release. Forgiveness didn't erase memory, it just forced it into silence. And silence has a way of building pressure. Kirk, on the other hand, moved differently. Sources close to the situation say Kirk always believed time would smooth things over. That staying together was proof enough, but he underestimated something important. Rashida's forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. She was healing, not resetting. As years passed, the distance between them didn't explode, it stretched. Small arguments lingered longer. Decisions were made without full conversations. And when Jasmine's name resurfaced again in private discussions, Rashida felt something shift inside her. Not panic, recognition. She had been here before. What made this moment different was the feeling of finality. Friends say Rashida sensed Kirk was no longer choosing repair, he was choosing direction. And direction doesn't require agreement. When word reached her about Kirk's alleged intention to move forward with Jasmine in a permanent way, the pain wasn't just betrayal. It was confirmation. Confirmation that the work she put into holding the marriage together might not have been mutual. Confirmation that endurance alone can't sustain a relationship when respect erodes. Confirmation that loving someone doesn't protect you from their decisions. Emotionally, Rashida withdrew. She didn't lash out publicly. She didn't post cryptic messages. She focused inward, leaning on a small circle that knew how much she had already survived. People close to her say she asked one question over and over. When is enough enough? That question haunted her. Because walking away wouldn't just end a marriage, it would close a chapter she fought desperately to save. Staying meant accepting a reality she could no longer live with. And in that space between staying and leaving, Rashida found herself facing a truth she had avoided for years. Love shouldn't require erasing yourself to keep it alive. The danger now wasn't what Kirk might do next. It was what Rashida would finally choose for herself. The story became public faster than Rashida expected. It didn't break through an official announcement. It didn't come from a court filing or a sit-down interview. It surfaced through whispers that turned into screenshots and screenshots that turned into headlines. The word spreading wasn't dating. It wasn't reconnecting. It was marrying. According to multiple sources, Kirk Frost had been having private conversations that suggested he was preparing for a permanent move forward with Jasmine Washington. Not as a storyline, not as speculation, as a decision. When Rashida learned how the rumor started, the pain shifted into something colder. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone twisting words. It came from people who believed the choice was already made. Friends say Rashida didn't confront Kirk immediately. She needed clarity before emotion. She waited, watched, and listened. And when she finally asked him directly, his response didn't bring relief, it brought distance. According to those close to the couple, Kirk didn't deny that he had considered it. He framed it as thinking ahead, doing what's best, and finding stability. Words that sound calm until you realize what they exclude, Rashida. That was the first crack. The second came when Jasmine allegedly confirmed, privately, that conversations had moved beyond co-parenting, that plans were being discussed, that the future was being imagined without Rashida's place in it. That's when the truth hit hard. This wasn't a triangle anymore. It was a turning point. The shocking twist didn't arrive with shouting or tears. It arrived with paperwork. A source close to the situation revealed that Kirk had already begun consulting about legal separation logistics weeks before the rumor surfaced. Not filed, not finalized, but prepared. Prepared means decided. Rashida realized something in that moment that changed how she saw the entire marriage. She had been fighting to preserve something Kirk was quietly preparing to leave. The imbalance wasn't new, but now it was undeniable. When the story reached fans, reactions exploded. Some were angry on Rashida's behalf. Others questioned why she stayed so long. A few defended Kirk, arguing that people grow and move on. The noise grew loud, fast, and unforgiving. Rashida said nothing publicly. That silence worried people who knew her, because it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like resolve. Behind the scenes, Rashida met with advisors and family, not to plan a reaction but to plan her next steps. Financially, emotionally, privately. She wasn't preparing for a scene, she was preparing for a life shift. Then came the detail that flipped everything again. A trusted source confirmed that the alleged plan to marry wasn't about romance alone. It was about control of narrative. By making a decisive move, Kirk could frame the ending as progress instead of failure. He could present stability where chaos once lived. That revelation reframed the situation entirely. This wasn't just about choosing Jasmine. It was about choosing an ending that benefited him. When Rashida understood that, something inside her settled. She stopped asking questions that didn't have answers. She stopped waiting for honesty that came too late. And she made a decision of her own. Not to react, not to retaliate, but to protect herself. The first shocking twist wasn't Kirk's alleged plan. It was Rashida realizing she no longer needed to fight to be chosen. Because she was done auditioning for a place she already earned. And that realization set the stage for what comes next. When the world reacts, loyalties split, and one final truth changes everything. Once the rumor reached full volume, everything around Rashida started moving faster than she could process. Phones rang non-stop, friends checked in, business partners asked quiet questions. And fans flooded social media with opinions that swung wildly from sympathy to judgment. Some demanded answers from Rashida, others demanded accountability from Kirk. Very few stopped to consider how heavy this moment actually was for her. The pressure wasn't just public, it was personal. Rashida began noticing things she hadn't wanted to see before, missed calls that weren't returned, conversations that felt rushed, decisions already made before she was even informed. It wasn't loud betrayal, it was quiet replacement. Meanwhile, Kirk stayed calm in public. That calm unsettled people. Instead of denying the reports, he spoke vaguely about moving forward, doing what's right, and choosing peace. Those words sounded mature on the surface, but they avoided the one thing everyone wanted clarity on: Rashida. That avoidance fueled suspicion. Then a private message surfaced, not a scandalous one, not dramatic, just a message allegedly sent by Kirk to someone close saying, "This was always going to end this way. I just waited until it made sense." That sentence hit like a punch, because it suggested the marriage didn't end because of one decision. It ended because the ending had already been chosen. The second major twist came shortly after. A source revealed that Rashida had actually been given an ultimatum months earlier. Not publicly, not aggressively, quietly. She was told that certain arrangements would change and that she needed to be open to transition. At the time, she thought it meant boundaries. Healing, adjustment. It didn't. It meant preparation for exit. That revelation changed how people saw Rashida's silence. She wasn't blindsided, she was cornered, asked to accept change without being told the full truth, expected to remain composed while the ground shifted under her feet. As this information circulated, public opinion shifted again. People stopped asking why Rashida stayed. They started asking why she was asked to endure uncertainty while someone else planned certainty. Jasmine's role became clearer too. Sources say Jasmine believed she was stepping into stability, not controversy. She saw Kirk's calm as confidence, his certainty as commitment, but as the backlash grew, even she reportedly questioned the timing and the cost. Behind the scenes, tensions rose. Legal consultations turned serious, boundaries were drawn. Communication between Rashida and Kirk became minimal and direct. No emotional back and forth, just logistics, just clarity. And then Rashida did something no one expected. She spoke briefly, not in an interview, not in a live. In a room with people she trusted, she said, "I won't compete with someone else's decision." That sentence spread quietly. It wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter, it was final. The second major twist wasn't about marriage papers or announcements. It was about power shifting. Rashida stopped waiting, stopped negotiating, stopped hoping. She began planning a future that didn't require explanation or endurance, a future built on choice, not survival. And once she did that, everything changed. Because the moment Rashida chose herself, the narrative no longer belonged to Kirk. It belonged to what came next. And that next step would force everyone to confront a truth they weren't ready for yet. The fallout hit Rashida's world in ways no headline could capture. Publicly, support poured in. Fans posted messages calling her strong, graceful, and patient. Many admitted they had judged her in the past without understanding how much she had endured. Others apologized outright for questioning why she stayed. The tone shifted from criticism to concern. Privately, it was harder. Rashida felt the weight of years crashing down at once. Not just the marriage, but the identity she had built around holding things together. She had been the one expected to forgive, to compromise, to keep the peace. Letting go meant rewriting how she saw herself. Family stepped in quietly, no public statements, no drama, just presence, long conversations, late-night check-ins, people reminding her of who she was before survival became her default mode. The business side reacted fast. Brand partners reached out with support. Some offered flexibility, others offered opportunity. It became clear that Rashida's value had never depended on her marriage, only on her consistency, work ethic, and connection with her audience. That realization gave her strength. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost faced a different kind of response. The calm tone he tried to maintain publicly began to feel disconnected from the emotional reality of the situation. Viewers questioned his phrasing, his timing, his avoidance of specifics. The more measured he appeared, the more distant he seemed. Friends of the couple reportedly urged him to address things more directly, not to defend himself but to acknowledge Rashida's pain. Whether he listened or not, the silence widened the gap between explanation and accountability. Jasmine Washington found herself pulled into the storm as well. She became the focus of speculation she didn't fully ask for. Some blamed her, others defended her. A few recognized that stepping into a situation shaped by years of unresolved issues came with consequences no one could control. The public reaction fractured loyalties. Some fans chose Rashida completely, some chose to stay neutral, others doubled down on defending Kirk's right to move forward. But the loudest shift was this: people stopped demanding Rashida explain herself. They accepted her silence. Emotionally, Rashida began setting boundaries she hadn't allowed herself before. She stopped engaging with commentary. She limited who had access to her time. She protected her peace without apologizing for it. In one quiet moment shared with friends, she admitted something that stayed with them. "I thought staying meant strength, but leaving takes more courage." That sentence defined the fallout. Because the real impact wasn't public opinion, it was internal freedom. As days passed, Rashida's posture changed. She looked lighter, not happy, not relieved, but grounded, like someone who had stopped bracing for the next hit. The world continued debating who was right. Rashida moved on from that question entirely. And that shift, away from defending the past and toward choosing the future, set the stage for the final moment in this story. Because the last twist wouldn't come from Kirk, it wouldn't come from Jasmine, and it wouldn't come from the public, it would come from Rashida herself. Rashida didn't announce her decision, she let it speak for itself. One morning, without captions or commentary, Rashida removed her wedding ring. No dramatic post, no explanation, just a single image that said more than words ever could. Fans noticed immediately, so did the people who mattered. Behind the scenes, she had already taken steps no one saw coming. Legal meetings had happened quietly. Financial plans were reviewed, boundaries were formalized. This wasn't a reaction, it was preparation. Rashida wasn't running from the marriage. She was stepping out of a cycle that asked her to endure more than it ever returned. Then the hidden detail surfaced. A trusted source revealed that Rashida had been asked, months earlier, to appear supportive of a future she wasn't included in. To keep things calm, to avoid rocking the boat, to let the transition look smooth. She agreed at the time, believing clarity would follow. It never did. That revelation reframed everything. The shock wasn't that Kirk Frost was planning a future. It was that Rashida had been asked to help manage the optics of her own replacement, to absorb uncertainty so someone else could move with certainty. When she realized that, something clicked. She stopped negotiating for honesty. She stopped waiting for timelines. She stopped cushioning decisions she didn't make. And then came the moment no one expected. Rashida declined to film a scene that would have framed the situation as mutual growth. No argument. No walkout, just a firm no. She chose not to participate in a narrative that asked her to smile through an ending she didn't choose. That choice sent ripples. Producers adjusted plans, conversations stalled. People realized Rashida wasn't going to help soften the landing anymore. The story wouldn't be polished, it would be honest, or it wouldn't be told by her at all. Jasmine Washington reportedly felt the shift too. What once seemed like certainty now came with weight. Public scrutiny intensified. The future she thought was settled suddenly felt exposed to questions she didn't anticipate. And Kirk, he stayed quiet. But the silence sounded different now. Not controlled, not calm, just absent. Rashida, meanwhile, made one final move that sealed the chapter. She filed a private request, not public, not dramatic, to formalize separation terms. Not to punish, to protect. To close a door that had been left half open for too long. The final twist wasn't a fight, it wasn't a reveal, it was resolve. Rashida chose herself without asking for permission, without an apology, without needing agreement. And here's the cliffhanger. There's still one conversation that hasn't happened, one truth that hasn't been acknowledged out loud, one decision whose full impact hasn't landed yet. Because when separation becomes public, and it will, the question won't be who won. It will be who finally told the truth first. And when that truth surfaces, it won't just redefine this marriage. It will redefine how strength looks when it stops being silent. Stay ready, because the next chapter doesn't belong to rumors. It belongs to Rashida, and she's just getting started.